The council chamber fell silent as the holographic display flickered to life, showing the scorched remains of Outpost Zeta 7. Commander Velthor of the Kryn Empire stood at the center, his four eyes narrowing as he addressed the assembly of alien dignitaries. This, he gestured toward the devastation, is what happens when you underestimate humanity. Avery Chin sat in the corner of the briefing room, her combat armor still bearing the carbon scoring from the previous day's engagement. Her short black hair was matted with sweat, and her gray eyes remained fixed on the display. Beside her, James Rodriguez leaned back against the wall, his muscular frame relaxed despite the tension in the room. The war had been raging for 3 standard cycles. The Kryn Empire, backed by the technological might of a dozen allied species, had expected the conquest of human-controlled space to be swift. They had been catastrophically wrong. "Tell them what you witnessed," Velthor commanded, his translator rendering his words into perfect standard English. Avery stood slowly, her presence commanding immediate attention despite her relatively small stature compared to the towering aliens around her. "You want to know why we're still here? Why your fleets are broken and your armies are retreating?" She activated her wrist display, bringing up tactical footage from the Battle of Thermopylae Station. The aliens leaned forward, watching as human forces faced impossible odds. 3 days ago, the Kryn threw everything at our position, Avery began, her voice steady. 40,000 troops supported by heavy armor and atmospheric superiority. We had 800 defenders and a reactor that was counting down to meltdown. The footage showed the initial assault. Plasma fire rained down on the human positions, turning the lunar surface into a sea of molten glass. Any rational species would have surrendered or retreated. Humans did neither. James picked up the narrative, pushing off from the wall. "The reactor breach wasn't an accident. We triggered it ourselves." Gasps rippled through the chamber. The feline-like Cerati ambassador hissed in disbelief. "That's suicidal madness." "That's strategy," James corrected, a slight smile playing at his lips. "While your forces were advancing, we evacuated through the maintenance tunnels. But we left something behind." The holographic display shifted, showing Avery and James in the reactor chamber, their environmental suits barely protecting them from the radiation that would have killed most species instantly. They moved with practiced precision, planting charges and rerouting coolant systems. The Kryn poured into the station. Avery continued, believing they'd won. They planted their flag, transmitted their victory to high command, and began fortifying their position. She paused, letting the tension build. Then we walked back in. The footage cut to thermal imaging. 2 small signatures, impossibly small compared to the massive Kryn warriors, moved through the superheated corridors of the reactor section. The temperature readings on screen showed levels that should have been instantly lethal. "Impossible," Velthor whispered. "No species can survive such conditions." "Most can't," James acknowledged. "But humans didn't evolve on a gentle world. We're persistence hunters from a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to endure." The tactical display showed what happened next. Avery and James, moving through fires hot enough to melt standard combat armor, struck with surgical precision. They didn't fight the entire Kryn force. They didn't need to. They destroyed key support structures, severed communication lines, and most devastatingly, they prevented the evacuation when the reactor finally went critical. "You murdered 40,000 troops," the Cerati ambassador accused. Avery's eyes hardened. "We destroyed an invasion force that had already killed millions of our people. We used the only weapon available to us, your overconfidence and our ability to survive what you cannot." The holographic display shifted again, showing the aftermath. Where the Kryn had expected an easy victory, they found only ghosts moving through smoke and flame. Survivors spoke of human soldiers appearing from nowhere, striking without warning, then vanishing back into conditions that should have killed them instantly. "They call you the ghost of war," Velthor said quietly, looking directly at Avery. "You and your partner. The Kryn troops whisper that you're not alive at all, that you're spirits of vengeance that cannot be killed." "We're very much alive," Avery replied. "But we represent something your empire needs to understand about humanity." James stepped forward, standing beside her. "Every species in this galaxy evolved to be specialists. The Kryn are perfect soldiers, strong, disciplined, fearless. The Cerati are unmatched tacticians. The Vex have technology we can barely comprehend. But humans, Avery interjected, we're generalists. We're not the strongest, not the smartest, not the fastest. But we can survive in environments that would kill any of you. We can adapt to anything. And when you push us into a corner, when you take away every advantage, we become the environment itself. James finished. We become the fire you can't walk through, the radiation you can't survive, the darkness you can't see in. The chamber remained silent as the weight of their words settled over the assembly. The footage continued playing behind them. Images of human forces using tactics that seemed suicidal to any other species but were devastatingly effective. Fighting in the crushing pressure of deep ocean trenches. Surviving in the frozen void of space with minimal protection. Enduring radiation, chemical weapons, and biological agents that should have wiped them out. Velthor finally spoke, his voice heavy with something that might have been respect or fear. The Kryn High Command has authorized me to propose a ceasefire. Avery and James exchanged glances. After 3 cycles of brutal warfare, the message was finally getting through. Your terms, Avery asked. Withdrawal from all human systems. Recognition of your territorial sovereignty. And Velthor hesitated. A formal apology and reparations for the invasion. Why now? James asked. You still have superior numbers and firepower. The Kryn commander's expression was difficult to read, but his translator captured the emotion in his voice. Because we've finally understood what we're fighting. You humans don't just fight wars, you become war itself. You're willing to walk through hell, to turn your own worlds into furnaces, to sacrifice everything if it means victory. We cannot defeat that. No one can. Avery stepped closer to the holographic display, her reflection ghost-like against the images of devastation. Tell your high command we'll consider their proposal. But understand this. If you ever threaten humanity again, there won't be battlefields. There won't be armies facing each other across clear lines. There will only be ghosts, James added softly, walking through fire that no one else can survive. The council chamber erupted in discussion as various ambassadors debated the implications. But Avery and James had already said what needed to be said. They turned and left together. 2 humans who had proven that sometimes the deadliest weapon wasn't superior technology or overwhelming force. Sometimes it was simply the refusal to accept defeat and the ability to survive what should have been impossible. As they walked through the corridors of the diplomatic station, James glanced at his partner. Think they'll actually leave us alone? Avery's expression remained neutral, but there was a fire in her eyes that matched the flames they'd walked through. They will, because they've learned what every predator on Earth eventually learned about humans. What's that? We're the prey that became the apex predator. And we never, ever forget. Behind them, the council continued to debate. But the decision had already been made, written in fire and sealed with the blood of those who had underestimated humanity's greatest strength. Not their technology, not their tactics, but their sheer, unbreakable will to survive and overcome, no matter the cost. The ghost of war had earned her title, and the galaxy would remember.